The letter to the second church, Smyrna, begins in verse 8. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, the first and the last, who was dead and has come to life, says this. Now, in that introduction where Jesus gives a title to himself, this is one of those instances where the title really fits the city that it was given to. You see, Smyrna was a city that had been destroyed in 580 BC and then rebuilt 300 years later by Lysimachus as a planned city. It was one of the first planned cities of the ancient world. And so we know a little bit about that, right? Because we have planned cities like Phoenix, which are laid out so nicely. All the roads go north and south, east and west. All the commerce is in the same part of the city. All the retail's in the same part of the city. It's just well laid out. It's laid out with a plan for growth for the future. And we know cities like our own Pittsburgh, right? Which is not a planned city, and so you got buildings stacked upon buildings, you got roads that go every which way, and bridges, and boy, it just makes it a nightmare to drive around in, right? Well, Smyrna was a city that had risen out of the ashes of complete destruction, was rebuilt to on a plan to be really one of a special city in the ancient world. And so to this city that had risen again, Jesus writes, hey, listen, your city is a picture of resurrection, but hey, I am the real resurrection. I'm the one who was dead and has come to life. I'm the one who brings life from anything dead. So I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you're really rich. And the blasphemy by those who say they're Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Don't fear what you're about to suffer. Behold, the devil's about to cast some of you into prison, so that you'll be tested, and you'll have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. So, to this church, it's the only church that he says nothing negative about. To this church, he says, there is some difficulties that you're facing. First of all, he says you're experiencing persecution, tribulation. And there's basically two words that he could use for tribulation. And instead of the lesser word, the weaker word, he uses the strongest word, the word's thlipsis. And that word means extreme or serious trouble. This is not just your run-of-the-mill persecution that they're facing. Like we might say we faced when somebody just tells us to take a religious decoration down, or won't say Merry Christmas to us in the store. This is much worse than that, and it's persecution of a specific kind from a specific source. It's coming from Jews who claim Judaism, but they're not really Jews, because Jesus says they're not really living by their faith. You see, this is a place where the church experienced just extreme persecution from their Jewish cousins. In fact, a number of years later, one of the great saints of the church, Polycarp, is going to be martyred in this city. And history tells us that the Jews were so in arms against Polycarp and the Christians that they actually gathered firewood on the Sabbath to lay at the feet of Polycarp to contribute to him being burned at the stake. Now that is a pretty serious thing to these Jews who, right in the Old Testament, it says they're not to gather firewood on the Sabbath, and yet they break their own religious rule to what? Bring death to one of God's people. It's entirely against everything that the Old Testament holds true, and yet that's the kind of persecution from these ones who say they are Jews, but they're really a synagogue of Satan. That's the kind of persecution, it's serious persecution, that Smyrna is facing. But it also says, I know your poverty. And again, there's two words for poverty that he could have used. But instead of the word penes, which is the lighter word, he uses the word tokia, which is very extreme poverty. And so this isn't like you and I might say we're poor. I could say, hey, I'm poor because I'm not driving a Cadillac. I'm driving my 2001 Toyota Corolla that, because of our harsh winter last year, the plastic door handles on the inside cracked, and so both the driver's and the passenger side, you got to do something funny, hold the door handle in a special way before you can open it. I got to teach every single person that rides with me how to get out of my car, and I could say, I'm poor because I can't afford a brand new Cadillac, but not really. I mean, because I have a car, which is better than 80 or 90% of the population of the world, and so we would say, we're poor, but that would be kind of the weak sense of poor. These were people who, because of the persecution, the Jews were conspiring with the Romans to seize these people's businesses, their homes, their belongings. A lot of these people were made homeless overnight because of their faith. And Jesus says, I know your extreme poverty. But then he says in parentheses, you're really rich though, because you're poor in the world's standards, but you're rich because you have me. And this is one of the rare churches that Jesus says nothing negative about. He just says, hold up, bear up. You're going to experience this persecution, but I am going to take care of you.